I want to start by sharing a story. Years ago, there was a business leader, a business tycoon, was invited to speak at a major university. They rolled out the red carpet. They paid him a five-figure check, similar to what I'm getting paid here. And anyway, this is great. And they came, and he stood in front of this large auditorium. The basketball arena was full of people. And at the very beginning, he walked up to the podium, and he said, I'd like to see by raise of hands how many of you are planning on changing the world. And he said, bring up the lights, and he looked out. And in this group of mostly young people, but community members, there were only a handful of hands that went up. And he paused, and he said, all right, those of you who have your hands up, keep them raised. I want to meet you. Would you please come down out of the audience, and I want to meet you. He turned around, and on the stage there were dignitaries, people that were important and paid a lot of money to the university. He kicked them off the stage, and he gathered a small semicircle of chairs, and he greeted the people and sat them down one by one, the people who were committing, standing for changing the world, making a difference in the world. And he sat down with them, and he began to talk. Now, after a few minutes, what did the audience start to do? They started to get, by the way, this isn't television, I can see you. So they started to get what? They started to get a little restless, started to get a little noisy. He excused himself from the group. He walked back up to the podium. He says, excuse me, I'm trying to teach a seminar to the leaders of the 21st century. Will you please be quiet? And he went and sat back down. Now, for those of you who have ever presented anything, you know that a few minutes of quiet in a room feels like forever. Like if I don't pause very often, but if I pause for a little while, it would feel like a lot longer than it is. So a few more minutes went by, and people got noisy again. And he walked back up to the podium one more time, and he said, excuse me, if you can't be quiet, will you please leave? And he went and sat back down. Now, the president of the university didn't get kicked off the stage. He was very interested in what was going on. He started to see maybe some people wandering out, deciding whether or not they were actually going to leave and whether or not there was actually going to be a presentation that day. The president of the university stood up. He walked over to the group, trying to just catch the eye of the presenter, as if to say, hey, we're cool, right? Remember the check I gave you? We're good. This is going to all turn out, and everyone's going to love it. And the presenter turned to the president, looked up at him. He looked back at him, and he said, excuse me, did you raise your hand? Now, I have a question for you before we begin, and I hope you're all ready for it. But it's actually a pretty serious question. It's one that, when you think about the preciousness of life, when you think about how little time we have in the span of the way the world moves and how important this little span of life we get is, it's a really important question. I used to teach high school students. And it was so sad how many of them, when they could pull themselves away from the video glaze that kind of engulfed them, didn't really see themselves as anything significant or having a significant impact in the world around them. And I'm not saying that you're going to be on the cover of Times Magazine. What I'm saying is that how many of you are planning on having an impact in the world? And instead of having you raise your hand, I'm actually going to have you stand, because we want to stand for that. So how many of you are in that class? All right, don't go. I think that would be a little crowded. All right, I think we can keep going. That was really close, because I was afraid that we were just going to have a few, and that would be embarrassing. All right, go ahead and sit down. All right, so as was mentioned in the introduction, my name is Dan Ralphs. I'm a dream manager at my company. Now, I know most of you have dream managers at your companies, but for those of you who don't, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I've learned. And I want to share with you from a position where I get to play and I get to spend time in the space where we literally have people come and they say whatever the dream might be, and we figure out how to get them to that dream. And that's my job, and that's what I get to do day in and day out, and it's a lot of fun, you might imagine, but it's really hard as well. And I get to do that for a company called Infusionsoft, which is a local company here based out of Chandler, Arizona. And not only is Infusionsoft an awesome enough company to care about the value of, we believe in people and their dreams, but they care enough about it to pay someone to live that value and to bring that value to life in a company. And so today I'm going to teach you first what a dream is, how we define it. Second, I'm going to teach you some fundamental things that you need to know about yourself and your ability to go accomplish dreams. There are different types of dreamers. We're going to help identify that. And if I have time, we're going to make some recommendations and we're going to begin the dreaming process. Is that okay? If that's okay, just kind of nod so I know that you're still watching. All right. All right, so let's start off by teaching you what a dream is. To understand what a dream is, you have to understand that we have a biological propensity, kind of a natural way of doing things that I call the humdrum conundrum. That's cute, right? It's cute, humdrum conundrum. Nobody really thinks it's cute. I do, though. And here's the thing. Our brains are constantly predicting the future. Did you know that? That you're constantly predicting the future. If I threw the pen across the room, you'd all be surprised because your brains were predicting that he's not going to throw the pen. He's going to do things the way that things are normally done. Does everyone get that? And what do we base our predictions on the future on? So, on the past, right? So if this is the future, we're deciding what the future will be like based on the past. And now here's the interest. This is where the conundrum comes in. We typically behave, our actions are consistent with our prediction of the future. Man, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? We usually have peanut butter and jelly. I'm going to then go home and I'm going to make a what? Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So we consistently respond to where we're going and we're creating additional past based on our prediction of what the future would be. Everyone got that? So I usually teach this in 90 minutes. I'm going to try to do it in 30, so we're going to have to go fast. So essentially, we get in this idea of this, what I call the humdrum conundrum. We tend to do the same things over and over again. It's like a deer. So imagine a deer in the forest. If it wanders down to drink water and it wanders back and doesn't die, which path does it take the next time? Same path. Until what? Until it dies, right? It will keep going down that same path again and again. And if it's lucky enough to have children, it will say, all right, kids, that's the path. Don't leave the path or else you'll die. It's in us to do the same kind of thing. How many of you have one way to get to work and only one way, and it would be like a travesty if you had to move out of that way, right? We have a way of doing our lives, and I call that our default. We have a default way of doing life. All of us do, no matter how cool you think you are. I do. We all have that kind of default way of doing life. We have a way of doing a default day. We have a way of doing a default week. And if we're not careful, we might end up just doing a default life, right? We might just end up, the whole life will just be the default, a little copycat, maybe a little mom mixed in, a little dad, maybe a grandpa here or there, an uncle. We all mixed in, we'll kind of follow that default life. Now, the one thing that's exciting about you guys, as entrepreneurs, you already are kind of bucking that system a little bit, right? You already have something inside of you that says, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go create in the world, not just exist in the world. And so, but we all have this default life. Can you all kind of feel that inside yourself, a tendency to want to do the same thing again and again? Kind of nod again if that makes sense. All right, awesome. And so we have a default life. So dreaming is then identifying things outside of the default in the world of what is possible. So a dream is then defined as something that is possible, but not reasonable, but that is desirable. Got it? So it's possible, not reasonable, not going to happen anyway, but that is desirable. That's how we define a dream. Everyone got that? And so one of the things that you come to learn very quickly when you start the process of dreaming, so if I do recommend to you, if you were to make a list of 100 dreams, 100 things that for you would be like, man, that would be cool. It's not going to happen anyway, but man, that would be really cool for my business, for my life, for my marriage. You would just say, man, I really like the idea of those things being a part of my world. And if you were to make a list of those, something would stand out to you. And here's one of the things that would stand out. You dismiss possibilities without consideration. So you dismiss possibilities without consideration. Like, I forget who it was up here who said, yeah, we pushed 100 million pieces of literature. And some of you, even though that is something that would be desirable for you to be a part of, have dismissed that possibility without consideration. You never stopped and said, well, what would it take to get 100 million? A billion, why not, right? Like, what would that take? And actually went through the process of considering it, deciding, and making a decision on which direction we're going to go. So we dismiss, one of the functions of this filter, of this default, is that we dismiss possibilities without consideration. So as a dream manager, my job is to help people to first identify and say, man, I have dreams, possibilities out there that I might be interested in considering, and then to help them to move towards accomplishing those dreams. An example, I had somebody that came in, and we take pretty much any kinds of dreams. So I said, hey, young man, what's your dream? And he was one of the millennials that work in our company, and he said, my dream is to own a PlayStation 4. And I in my heart was saying, all right, are you sure that's the height of your aspirations? Because we could probably do better. But I said, all right, well, let's go figure that out. And we said, all right, if that's your dream, let's go get it. And by the way, is that going to take a long time for somebody who's industrious and decides, commits to that dream? No, it didn't take very long at all. He went out, he accomplished that dream. Now, what happens when before we're living in this rut, and you leave the rut to go accomplish a dream, what happens to the rut? It expands. I like that. Who said expands? Oh, yes, 10 points for Gryffindor. Good job. So it expands, right? It gets bigger. And as it gets bigger, right, my circle of influence gets bigger. And so I said to that young man, I said, all right, we've accomplished that dream. What's next? And this was really interesting. He said, you know what, Dan? He said, my wife and I, you didn't think he was married. He said, my wife and I, we're thinking about having kids. And she works and I work, and we've talked about it, and we'd really love it if she didn't have to. And I would love for the possibility of us, giving that to her. But I would need to make, and I said, how much? And he said, double. And I said, we're dreaming here, so that's how much you need. How much do you want? And he was like, triple. Right? And so I said, oh, right, well, when do you want it? He said, well, you're talking about, taking some steps in the next year. I said, you want to triple your income in a year? And he said, uh-huh. And so we said, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like, that seems possible. There's nothing in physics that disallows that. And so we began to work, right? And this is one of the factors of dreaming, is when we go accomplish dreams get bigger. The next dream gets bigger. It expands. And he went and accomplished the next dream, by the way. He actually didn't accomplish it. A year later, we tallied it up, and he was $100 a month off from triple his income. I almost was like, all right, I'll just write the check. Here you go. It's going to be a better story. But he went and accomplished the dream, right? Now, he didn't quite. And you know what he said as well? He said, I don't really play the Xbox that much anymore. And I was like, didn't think so. But he went and accomplished a dream. Now what is possible? Where's the limit of what's possible? Yeah, with God, all things are possible. Now, just soak that in for a sec. Just let that kind of land in your heart and your brain. That's kind of a big statement. And we're stuck in our ruts. We're stuck in our defaults saying, oh yeah, well, I got to make dinner tonight, so I can't, blah, 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 blah. Well, the game's on this weekend, so blah, 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 blah. And we fill our lives with the rut. So here's the real question. You have to ask this. This is unique for every person on the planet, but here's my question. What is this line for you? What is it? There's a line here. There's a barrier there between you and going and just doing possibilities. And what's the line? Is anyone willing to volunteer and answer? Comfort, right? Comfort is the nice way of saying I'm scared. That's right, because really, comfort is saying I want to be in the place where I don't have to do scary or hard or painful things, right? But at the end of the day, it's some form of fear. It's some form of the deer going, man, if I leave this path, I might die. If I leave this path, I might die. There's something in it, typically. I remember a woman came across from me. She said, I want to be more creative. I said, man, that's a great dream. What kind of creativity do you want to do? She said, I want to take a class at the community college. I said, oh, that's fantastic. I said, what might be getting in the way? What would be stopping you from doing it? She's like, nothing. All I have to do is call. I pulled out my cell phone and I started to pass it to her. And she went like this, whoa. And I said, wait, you said you want this, desirable, true? Yes, it's desirable. And you said the only thing stopping you is calling, right? Yes. So, and it was funny because it was like you could feel the line. It was like, I'd push forward and she'd go, ooh, ooh. I played with it for a minute. And you know, there's something about it. And it's in all of us. And I'm not suggesting we can get rid of it at a drop of a hat. We can't click it off. But at the end of the day, as we continue to exercise, I wouldn't use this word in a typical business context, as we continue to exercise faith, belief, and we're willing to step out, right, into the fear and go, all right, I'm going to take a step, and I'm going to take another step. We begin to be able to expand this circle. What would be another name for this circle? It's a circle of influence. So as we expand out of our rut, we expand our circle of influence. And one key to unlock that door to expanding our circle of influence, by the way, this is why Infusionsoft's interested in this, because which employee do you want? Do you want this one or this one? Yeah, easy, right? It's not even a contest. It's like, I want this employee. So as a company, we go, do you know what? I got an idea. We're going to invest in helping you be really cool. And by investing in you being really cool, and as long as we can keep you around, we won't keep everyone around, but if you're in the process of being cool, we're going to get much more productivity, we're going to get much more creativity, we're going to get much more investment of time and effort and discretionary effort. We're going to get all of that. And so we're interested in investing and having you become a really cool, powerful, successful, influential person. And we're going to be intentional about that impact. We're going to invest in that. We're going to hire a dream manager. We're going to certify our leaders to be dream managers. We're going to do all of this work to help them expand. That makes sense? And so for us, we're very interested in helping people to accomplish their dreams. And to be quite honest, I'm interested in helping you guys accomplish your dreams because I like it when the good guys win, right? There are too many bad guys winning. I want good guys to win. And of all the people that should be able to cross the barrier of fear, of all the people who should be able to kind of take steps into the darkness, not knowing the end from the beginning, it should be groups like this. So that's what a dream manager does. He helps people do that. And helps people, like there's a lot more to it, right? But that's the idea. So I want to teach you about a more pragmatic view of this. So that was the kind of the high level, that's the philosophical side. I want to teach you a little bit more of the detailed side of how you can actually go and how we might be able to help you impact or adjust the way you're attacking your dreams in a way that will make you more successful in accomplishing regularly dreams. By the way, the life of an entrepreneur is a constant life of knocking down one barrier after the next, isn't it? Constantly going, all right, I don't know what to do. Do you know what to do? No, I've never done this before. Everything from a website to a marketing channel to automated marketing to all of a sudden now I have to have content marketing. Now I have to have Snapchat. It's like, oh my goodness, I don't even know what a Snapchat is. It's like all of a sudden that's going to be important. Like, man, I love the yellow pages. I miss those guys. Those are fantastic. As long as I had AAA on the front, I was like in business. So it becomes increasingly more complex. It becomes increasingly more difficult. All of a sudden, then you add people to the mix, and that makes it really hard. And so it's constantly doing this. So I want to help you get better. So there are two parts to dreaming. Usually, most people are good at one or the other, not both. This is why there are very few people who go do big things. Usually, you're good at one or the other, not both, and you need both to do good, to do big things. Imagination and execution. So there are two parts. The first part is imagination. Imagination simply means my willingness, my ability to go out and imagine something amazing. For some people, that comes totally naturally. You know who you are. Like, you're the ones who wake up in the morning and will be like, I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to live the perfect day. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to do 22 push-ups. Nay, I'm going to do 250 push-ups, and then, right? And we have this whole day, and we have this vision, or maybe you're more the romantic kind where you're like, I can imagine myself on the top of the Eiffel Tower with my spouse, and I'm there, and we're talking, and I throw a paper airplane off the top, and it lands in the lap of an old man. He opens it and finds the meaning of life. Like, you're more like, you can imagine big things. That's also true for people who just love new adventures, where you're the person that if your friends called at like 4:30 in the morning and they said, hey, we're going to go river rafting, you'd be like, that's exactly what I was thinking of doing, right? You're like, let's go. Like, you're ready for the new big thing. You're full of imagination. You can see the world and all of its possibilities. All right, let me see who those people are. So kind of raise your hand if you're in that camp. Raise them high so I can see. Then look around. Just kind of helps to look. Learn more from looking around than you do looking at me. All right, we have a bunch of dreamers in this group. This is fantastic. Now, the trouble with dreamers, now I'm one of them, so I can say this, is that typically we suffer to some degree with the idea of execution. That if we did all of the things we'd imagined we should do or could do, and we followed through consistently with those things, we would be fit, we would have law degrees. I mean, we would be like the most incredible people. We'd have billion-dollar companies, right? If we could only follow through on those things. And so here's my brief advice for those of you who are dreamers. Number one, I don't mean to be too harsh. So if this doesn't apply to you, don't take it badly. You need to get better at integrity. So here's the thing, and let me help you do that. Here's how you do that. Number one, you have to separate the difference between a goal and a dream. So there's a big difference, because those of you who are dreamers, everything is a goal and everything's a dream. It's all mixed into one thing. You have to learn how to have an imaginary place where you put the stuff that you would be cool to do, and then another place where it's the stuff I will do. And I am committed to doing. And I didn't learn that for very long. So for the longest time, I was like, man, it'd be cool to run a marathon. Man, that'd be fun. Like, I'd be like, hey, I ran a marathon. I don't know why. For some reason, that sounds cool. And all of a sudden, it wasn't until I learned this principle where I said, you know what? No, I'm going to actually commit. And do you know what happened to my dream of a marathon when I said, all right, what am I really willing to commit to doing this year by the end of the year? It turned into a half marathon. But I did it. I accomplished my half marathon. And that's not a big deal. Nobody's impressed by that. But for me, it was practicing and exercising the muscle of integrity, of learning how to transition something from an imaginary state into a real state and then bringing it into creation. That makes sense? To bring it into something that's real. And you can do that in small ways, like by never committing to do anything you don't follow through with. Try it for a day at first. Say everything you said, I will do today, you execute it with perfection, with exactness. I'm supposed to be there at 1 o'clock? I will be there at 1 o'clock. Oh, I'm going to send an email, and I'll have that to you by 4. It's there by 3:58. And you just get practice in the muscle of commitment and integrity. I could go on, but I'm going to talk to the execution folks for a minute. All right. So for those of you who are, is that okay? Are you mad at me, imagination people? All right. So I just want to tell you, sometimes we struggle with the ability to be very consistent and committed to the things we've imagined. Execution folks. So for those of you who haven't figured out whether or not you're imagination execution folks are fantastic. I married one. She's lovely and pays all the bills every time. In other words, execution people are extremely good at following through with what they've committed to do. They're the people who have lists. They will put something on the list just that they've already done so they can check it off. Because it feels so good to check things off lists. Anybody in that camp? All right, so we have a few of those. The other kind of type of execution person is the type of person who loves to research and understand how things work. So for them, they're the type of person when the dreamer shows up and says, oh, I got an idea. We're going to make $100 million, and here's how we're going to do it. In the back, they're going, actually, that's technically impossible. In fact, I've run the numbers, and in order for us to be able to do that, the most we could do is 2.8, right? Whatever, right? They have this little calculator in their brain. They're constantly in the mode of, there's a little flavor of cynicism, but for them, they would never call it cynicism. They would call it realism. Yeah, this is, all right, thanks, Mr. Mamby-Pamby Land. Let me tell you what's actually possible. Now, that's a challenge, right? For those of us who are trying to imagine big things, right? But for them, guess what? They're often right. They often have the ability to see and solve and design something that really will work. But when it comes to their ability to really imagine, it's a struggle. So again, let's see the execution folks. Raise your hands if you're in execution. All right. And if you look around, keep them up high. You don't really want to, but look around and you can see it's pretty well split, right? There's some of one type and there's some of another. And for those of you who are in the execution mode, let me give you a few words of advice. Number one, loosen up a little. Let go of control a little. Believe and trust a little more. Don't go as far as the people in the imagination camp want you to go. We need you to stay a little centered. But what's amazing is you have the incredible gift of getting things done, real things, real problems, solving real problems. But so often it's wasted on small things and small problems. Do you see that? And those who have the ability to blend these two things, whether it's a team, a partnership, whether it's in the same person, like Elon Musk, for example, has an incredible imagination, but man, that guy can execute. I mean, he'll put in, he's like, you know what, I'm just going to put in twice the number of hours as my competitor, and I'll get there twice as fast. Right? He's incredibly disciplined, incredibly committed. He never misses. He always knows every detail. But he also wants to go to Mars. Do you see how those two things together change the world? And so, as I wrap up, first of all, again, thank you for, I don't even know how they found me, but whoever found me, thank you for finding me and inviting me to come and speak today. Phone book, yeah. They called everyone up to D, and they're like, all right, well, this guy's going to win. So let me give you a very specific action. It's one of the things that imagination folks will especially need. Here's the specific action. I want you to make a list of dreams. And if you're willing to take on this action, I need you to add below that written commitment a date by which you will complete it. So you know your schedule. It could be this afternoon, could be next week. Write down a specific date of commitment when you'll actually follow through with that. And this will separate the men from the boys because those of you who are still going to hang out in imagination, not go accomplish big things, you'll write it down and you won't go fulfill on that, and that would be an evidence of you being a little bit out of integrity. So write down the list and make a list of 100 dreams. Now, for those of you who are on the execution side, this will push you. I talked to our VP of our chief people officer, said he only could get to 33. Like it stretched his ability to imagine. And so it will stretch your ability to imagine. And then choose one of those things that is accomplishable and within the period of 12 to 18 months. And go do it. Like really. Don't make it too hard for those of you who are like, oh, I'm going to change the world. Make it something like you go, where it's really a goal. It's like, I'm committing to this. I'll bet $100,000 I'll go do it. Like be committed to it. Know that you will go do it. For those of you, that's for my imagination folks. For execution folks, make it something completely impractical. Find something that's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I go do that? Just for the simple fact that it will help you to loosen, to move into a space where you go, you know what? I can see, I can imagine a little bit better. And it's like my friend who, whether it's traveling, like we're going to take a trip to the Bahamas next week. We're just going to figure out a way to do that, and we're going to, or whether it's, you know what? I've never gone across the street and met my neighbors. I'm just going to go do that. It scares me to death because I'm in my rut, and that's not part of my rut, but I'm going to go do that. And whatever that is, I'm going to invite you to go follow through with that commitment. Will you do it? It's that building that muscle that will allow us to change the world. A world that desperately, desperately needs to be changed. Thank you.